Okay, we're gonna get started. Thanks so much for coming tonight. My name is Keith Miller. I'm a real estate investor here in Missoula, and the Missoula Real Estate Meetup has three main goals. One, we want to learn more about the market. Two, we want to share strategies and information. And three, we want to build connections with those around us. And so we have a pretty good community here. We got record turnout tonight, so it should be fun. Okay. I want to quickly cover an underrated truth about real estate investing that I've learned throughout the last 4 years. Think about it this way. Who is going to be more successful? Someone who's reading books and listening to podcasts, or someone who's reading some books and listening to some podcasts, but has a bunch of people they know in the real estate industry in Missoula? I think it's a pretty straightforward answer there, and that's the purpose of this group, okay? So one thing we're going to do after this for the first time is we'll have an opportunity sharing portion where if you have a deal or you're looking for something or you're looking for a partner, you'll have the chance to get up and for 60 seconds make your sell or make your pitch. Or, ultimately we're not trying to this isn't like I'm trying to sell you on my $500 course. That's not what we're doing. But if you have an opportunity, there's an opportunity for you to share it with the group. Our sponsor this month is TSI, Title Services Incorporated. They're my favorite title company in Missoula. They're super responsive to questions, addressing concerns, things like that. Brady Potts is the guy to talk to at TSI if you need to talk to somebody. Our speaker today is Jessie Eagan. He's been involved in residential and commercial real estate for 28 years in Missoula. He has his own real estate agency, Eagan Real Estate. He's going to talk about what syndications are, how they allow for passive investing, and how they can be structured to ultimately purchase larger properties than any one person would be able to buy. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Jessie. Thanks for coming, man. Come on up.
You've got a hand from the back of the car. Does he need your mic?
Yes, he does need my mic.
Hello?
Yeah, you're good to go. You have to unzip. There you go.
All right. Got to get ready here. Feel like got a lot of people staring at me. Very awkward.
Yeah. Record turnout. Yep. No pressure.
So just ready?
Yeah, you're good.
Am I on here?
Yep. You nailed it.
Excellent. Hello, I'm Jessie Eagan, and I'm here today to talk to you about real estate investing and syndication. Can you guys hear back there, Funston?
You're going to have to project.
Good, gotcha. You guys gonna move up?
Yeah, if you want to move up, don't hesitate. If you want to move up, guys, don't hesitate. Dedicated space.
All right. Well, I'm Jessie Eagan. I'm a real estate broker here in town, and a real estate investor. And I want to talk to you guys tonight about what I do as far as how we invest, which is real estate syndications is what it's called, and a little bit about how I got started. So I went to school here. I think I moved here in January of '91. So it was 34 years ago. No, I'm sorry, January of '88 I moved here. I started in real estate in '92. But so I watched a movie in the late '80s called Wall Street. You guys remember that? It tripped my trigger. I was like, that's it. That's the guy I want to be. I want to be a stockbroker. I had a brief stint at Montana State. Played basketball for about 15 minutes there. Ended up in Missoula, and I ended up graduating from the university, and I moved to Las Vegas. and I wanted to get into real estate, but I wasn't sure. Well, I'm sorry, let me back up. First, I wanted to be a stockbroker. So when I got here, I got licensed. I talked to a broker into licensing me and kind of work as his assistant. He sent me to Seattle. I passed Series 6 and 63 so I could sell mutual funds. And I did that for a while, you know, smiling and dialing. It wasn't quite what I wanted to do. So then I was here at Missoula, going to school, living in a fraternity, trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I was getting a business degree, and I read a book. Now, this was 30 years ago, so don't hold this against me. Trump, The Art of the Deal. I read this book 35 years ago, and I'm telling you, this tripped my trigger. I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do it, but that's what I want to do. Not the president stuff, not just the... So anyway, this is really what got me going. So I left the university. I graduated in 91, went to Las Vegas, and worked. I was bartending, doing the Vegas thing, and I was trying to get into real estate and development, but I just didn't have a clue what it meant, how to do it. So somebody told me, you should get your real estate license. You know, they're killing it down here. I was like, God, that sounds so stupid, a real estate agent. So I didn't want to do that. I was bartending, and I went to the library, the public library, because we didn't have internet back then. And I checked out some real estate books, and I was like, hey, this is kind of cool. You know, they made it, you know, some successful guys. And so I went through the class, and I got my real estate license in Las Vegas. I got licensed in January of 92. And I remember doing a couple open houses. I got really good training. Savannah called me a while ago about putting her license with me. And I told her, I said, the most important thing you can do is get some good training to begin with. You know, so I was really lucky. I was with a big company. I got trained down there. And then I just like, you know, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to move back to Montana. I'm just lifelong Montana guy, 4th generation. So I moved back to Missoula and got my license. And it was really hard for me to get somebody to hire me. Nobody would hire me. I was pretty young at the time. I was probably 23. I just turned 24. And finally, this gal at Gillespie Realty, which is now Berkshire Hathaway, it was like 5 calls. She finally gave me a shot, and I got started in real estate. You know, and so I did the real estate brokerage for, I did residential. I started off in residential, and a lot of what I'm going to talk about is like you need to get good training or, you know, follow someone. There was a gal at Gillespie Realty named Cynthia Bryan. I think she's still selling real estate. She's like 107 or something like that now. I lived in her basement, and I followed her around like a puppy dog. They had a basement apartment. I lived there, and I followed her around. I went on appointments with her, and I just listened. And I just thought these words of wisdom. I mean, she was selling like 100 deals a year back then. And I was just sitting there, the stuff that would come out of her mouth, I was like, she's crazy, you know. And but it was just about, she was just doing it. She was just getting it done. She was just going on appointments. So I lived in her basement for 6 months, and then like doing my own thing. And I was pretty successful at real estate from the beginning. My first personal deal was a house in Great Falls. I'm from Great Falls, and it just seemed like whenever I go back, I'd find these deals. So I made an offer on a house for $37,000, $37,500, and I put $2,500 down, and she carried the contract. So I had to come up with $2,500, and well, through the inspection, with the credits and the tax reimbursement, I literally bought that house for a $10 bill. It was $9.75 or something like that. So I remember I gave a $10 bill, and I bought my first house. So I fixed it up, painted it a little bit, didn't really do much, rented it out, and I sold that house in a couple years for like, I think it was $68,000. I was like, wow, this is cool. I like this. This is cool. So that was kind of my first personal investment. And then I ran into a deal. Back then, in the early 90s, most of the deals I did were owner financing. And I think we're going to start seeing a lot more owner financing with this market. So the next deal I did, my mother was living in a fourplex. And I said, God, Mom, this is a pretty nice place. Your rent seems pretty cheap. And she said, yeah, the lady's husband died. I don't know what they're going to do. I mean, boom, I found her number. I called her. Next thing I know, I bought both those fourplexes. It was like $20,000 down on a contract. Didn't have to get any bank financing. The rub was she wouldn't allow any prepayment. So we structured the deal where there was no prepayment for her lifetime. older people, you'll find wealthy older people don't have any debt. They don't want to pay taxes, so they like to sell stuff on owner financing. I think owner financing is one of the greatest tools to build wealth in real estate, if you can find it. It's been really tough lately, but with the market going on as it is now, you're going to start seeing more and more of that. Okay, so then fast forward, 2001-ish, I was working, I moved to Phoenix for a year. I was down there about a year. I didn't do anything, golf, played poker, came back and I put my license at, it's Carl Prinzing. Does anybody know what the name of his office is? It was an ERA office at the time. So him and I were buddies from Gillespie, put my license there and kind of got going again. And then the internet bubble hit. The internet bubble bursted and the shit hit the fan, and it looked like real estate was going to tank. The stock market was way down. So there was a guy in town, if you're next to the Mo Club, it's called Howard's Apartments. He owned about 250 units around town. And I used to follow that guy around. You guys all know him. He worked on his stuff. So long story short, I was always running into him. I knew where he was at, and I just casually run into him. Like, hey, Howard, what's going on? God, we got some money. Like, what do you think of those fourplexes? So one day, this went on for about 4 years. In 2001, he called me. He's like, hey, Jesse, I'm 75, thinking of selling. So I made an offer on these 8 fourplexes on Turner and Palmer. And I made an offer, and he rejected it. And then I called him back one day. I ran into him, and he told me what he would take. He said, I want $200,000 per building. I was like, okay. So that sounds super cheap now, but this was in 2001, and it wasn't cheap. So I wrote up that offer right away, $1.6 million with $20,000 earnest money. So I went and dropped it off to him and said, hey, here's what you said. Take a look at it. And I didn't hear from him for like a week, maybe 2 weeks. And I was like, he just changed his mind. And I came into the office one day and there's an envelope on my desk. Shit, there's the buy sell. He signed it. So I'm like going, okay, I got $1,500 in my checking account. How do I get the earnest money? So I wrote out a prospectus. So let me back up a little bit. One of my good buddies from college, they used to own all the funeral homes here in town. We had been talking about buying some property and doing a fix and flip. At this time, houses were probably $200,000. You could buy a decent house and do some fix and flip. Well, the first one I happened to find was $1.6 million, and I got no money. So I wrote out the most archaic little prospectus, and I went to Kinko's and got like a $2 binder, a clear binder, and put it in there, and we gave it to his dad. His dad was a pretty big hitter in town back in the day. And, I felt so stupid. I felt, so out of my league. I mean, this guy to me was one of the most successful, wealthiest businessmen behind like a Dennis Washington here in town. And I'm pitching him to give me a, $1.6 million. Well, long story short, he looked at it and he sat me down, and John was sitting next to me, and he just started yelling at me. He's like, Jesse, this is serious. I'm telling you, I mean, if we do this, I want my fucking money back, and I was just like, and sure enough, he's like, all right, let's do it. So long story short, we go to he was in Scottsdale, and we set up the closing, and I go in there, and we bought the deal. So all of a sudden I owned 8 fourplexes. This is my first kind of mini syndication. I had a high net worth family, and he went along with me. So to kind of wrap up that story, the deal, we owned that now this was in 2001, and the markets were still down. The real, stock market was in the shitter, and people weren't sure what was going on. Well, then all of a sudden people started dumping money into real estate. If you remember, like 2002 through 2006, it was on, man. And about 2003, I noticed like stuff was just selling for apartments for like a lot. So I owned these 8 fourplexes. And then also from Howard Horton, I bought another 4-plex duplex and a house from him. So I had acquired about 40 units. I was about 32 years old. And I was like, yeah, this is it. I'm on my way. So, but part of the deal on the 8 fourplexes, I got no cash flow for the first 18 months. That was just part of the deal. So, okay, cool. So now it was coming due to where I become part of the deal. And all of a sudden the market's just on a tear. So I put one of those fourplexes up for sale for like $375 or something like that. Long story short, over the next 11 days, I sold all 8 fourplexes at about an average of 350 some thousand. So in 18 months, we netted $975,000 on that. My cut was 400 grand. So that was my first syndication kind of deal. It was an LLC, and it was pretty much a no money down. It was my sweat equity. So I'm 32 years old. I got like 400 grand in my pocket. And that back then, that was 20 years ago. So that's like a 32-year-old with about $900,000 in your pocket. You know, I was feeling pretty cool. So then I was like, okay, this is awesome. I want to, you know, so we were looking at a lot more deals. And I had, one of the things I found out is the more that I rubbed elbows with people with money, the more money I made. You know, it just kind of, I mean, this guy, I've had people accuse me of being arrogant. I like to think it's a confidence. But when I left that closing at 32 years old, and the most baller successful businessman in town just lent me $1.6 million, it happened to be my first 7-figure deal, and I fucking owned it. So when I left that closing, my head was so big and my chest was out, I could barely get through the door, you know. But it's just, so that parlayed it into, from there, we started looking at more deals and more deals, and the market was on such a tear. Long story short on that, Mr. Milletta passed away, and his son has actually passed away too, one of my best friends. So that dried up, you know, and then also about that time, 2008, another friend of mine here in town was doing syndications. They're called the Farron Group. You guys might have heard of them. Good friends of mine. He was doing syndications, and they were doing, his first syndication was Copper Run over on Reserve Street, and the second one was Montera condominium development up in Whitefish. So I was learning about syndications, but back then, syndications, kind of a quick overview, is you have your general partners and your limited partners. This structure has been around for hundreds, probably 200 years or more. And so you got your general partners that do all the work, put the deal together, take care of all the financing, find the deal. They handle it from cradle to grave, so to speak. The limited partners are the ones that invest along with you, that don't do anything. They have, their only risk is their investment. So I knew the structure, but going out and hustling money from other people, I didn't feel comfortable with that. I just didn't feel worthy of that. I've always struggled with issues about that. Like when I started in real estate, I was 24 years old. I swear to God, I know I don't look like it now, but I look like I was about 16. I went and got those big Clark Kent glasses that didn't have any prescription in them, just to make myself look older. So now I'm looking at syndicating, and it just you know, I learned about it, but I bought this book in 2008. This was it's called Principles of Real Estate Syndication. This Samuel Freshman's kind of the godfather as far as this book's been around forever, and this was the only thing out there on syndication and how to set them up. So I bought this book, and it sat, well, look, it looks brand new. I don't think it, you know, it's you know, I'm on page 1. So no, I've read it. So I bought that book in 2008, and about that time, the shit hit the fan with the recession, you know, like, and I mean, it was bad, you know, like, we always thought Missoula, I was like, oh, Missoula's got a bubble, we're not going to get hurt that bad. Well, everything was hitting in bigger cities in 07 and whatever, and in 2008, it really hit Missoula. So 2008 and 2009, I mean, there was nothing going on. 2009, I went to work every day. I worked my ass off, pimping myself out, doing broker price opinions for foreclosures for $50, shit like that. And I remember I made like $36,000 that year, and I mean, working hard. So this has always been on my mind, syndication. And then fast forward to about 2015, I kind of healed up from, I was healing. So basically the recession was really tough on me. I got hurt pretty bad. But in 2010, I've always been in apartments. I've always been known as an apartment broker. I've sold a lot of apartments. I had a lot of, there was a lot of people that were sitting on the sidelines through the recession with a lot of cash. And in 2010, people were seeing that rentals were a pretty good investment. And Missoula rentals were really good. So I had a couple big apartment sales in 2010 that kind of got me back on track. And then I just started looking for, you know, more deals. And how to put this together. So 2015, I bought the Firestone building downtown on Main Street, the old Firestone building there. And I had a plan to do a 5-story condominium tower there. We had, and I paid, I had renderings done and all that. And when that hit, so then we put out the press release. It was on a Saturday, it hit the paper. I pre-sold 22 of 27 units that Saturday. People just calling, it was just crazy. So I was gonna syndicate the deal, but I had so many pre-sales. I said, God, I bet you I could take this to one big hitter, maybe two, and they'll finance me because I've got all these pre-sales. So I did, and a friend of mine, he said, yeah, we'll do it. You know, it'd be about a $5 million downstroke, we'll build it. So everything was going great. Long story short, something happened. He went on a trip to Africa, and he came back and started wiggling on me. And now at the same time, the Merc was being bought by Andy Highlander, and they were starting to develop that. And they called me 10, 12, 15 times. They needed that property to park on and stage all their stuff. And I was like, hey, man, we already got our own thing. Then my investor got a little squiggly on me. So I called him. I called Andy Highlander, and we struck a deal. Basically, I flipped the Firestone to them in lieu of holding the listing rights if they built condos. Well, there's a beautiful Marriott AC. If you saw my renderings, it's pretty much the same building except for it says Marriott AC and it's a hotel. So I made a bunch of money when I flipped it. It worked out fine, but still no syndication, you know, so whatever. So, but I just really got after thinking this is what I want to do. I mean, my day job is a broker. I don't care if you're a plumber or a home inspector. I think the best wealth building tool is real estate, right? No matter what your day job. So once again, I started delving into syndication, and I was really putting it out there. I was like, I'm gonna find a deal, somebody that I can partner up with and do a syndication. There was a local lender that I like. We were going to do a deal together. It just didn't work out. And then one of my buddies that's an attorney, we were going to do it, and it just didn't work out. So long story short, the one of the apartments, about 2018, I got a call. I listed a 19-unit apartment building over on the west side, and which by the way, I've sold the same building 4 times now. Josh is smiling. He knows the building. It's my favorite building. I go by, just like, oh my God, look at that building. So anyway, I put it back up for sale for the 3rd time, and I got a call. I actually had an offer, pretty much a full price offer from a local broker. And then I got a call from John Nichols. And this was a family out of Southern California. And they were selling a mall. They were selling a shopping mall in Southern California, and they wanted to they were aggressively taking assets out of California and coming up to Montana. This was before COVID, it's 2018. So I was like, hey man, that all sounds cool. And I said, but I got an offer coming in. It's basically full price. Like, you gotta, you know, your deal would be contingent on the shopping mall selling. So I kind of blew him off. Long story short, his son called me back, and then they sent me some information on him. And I was like, so it would have been a cash deal so long story short, I was like, man, this would be a much better deal if their shopping mall closes. And I hate to say it, they're going to buy a lot of property in Montana. So I put it out to my seller is a very sophisticated surgeon. He does a lot of real estate. I said, here, this offer is going to come in any minute for this amount. This would be a cash offer, and these are the people. He said, let's go with this other one. So that worked out great. Cool. So I called them. They bought 909 Byron. It's a 19-plex over on the west side. So I sold them that, and then I sold them a couple other properties. And then I was putting it out there. I was using the secret. I was like, I'm going to be a syndicator. I'm going to find somebody I'm going to team up with. I was sitting there reading so fast forward from 2008 when I bought this book, and this was basically the only thing you could find on syndicating. Today, between YouTube and there is so much information out there on how to syndicate deals, and because it's starting to be a big deal, there's a lot of mentors and programs you can buy into and stuff like that. So anyway, I was sitting there reading this other book. This is Craig Haskell's a well-known syndicating coach. I don't know if he's still around. He had some bad health issues, but I was watching Craig Haskell, and I was watching one of his videos, and the Nichols, I was reading about pitch decks, how to put a pitch deck together. I was looking at it, and I I saw the logo on one of their pitch decks with these people I've been working with. I'm like, oh, that's weird. So I call up John. I'm like, hey, listen, man, I'm looking at a Craig Haskell video. I see your logo. He goes, yeah. He goes, my dad and I took that. He took his course, and we're going to get into syndicating. I was like, no shit. I said, God. And then so I told him my story, and they said, well, let's do it. And so I'd sold them a few properties in town here. They own a house in Hamilton. They're fly fishing fanatics. And so they liked, if you guys go out to East Missoula, all the new apartments along the road there, it's called East Village, the Mountain Modern, we call it. They really like that look. I know some people don't like it, but whatever. So they liked that. They thought it was super cool. And I said, well, let me show you this. So I took them to Lolo by the Lolo Peak Brewery, which is the same builder, same aesthetics, right in that gravel pit there, that big gravel pit. I said, hey, this is ready to go for 34 units. We can do an additional 38 units. And they're like, yeah, let's do it. So anyway, it wasn't that simple. But basically, that was our first syndication. So I teamed up with John and his son and myself. We put together a 506C, which is a syndication. This one was a little different in the fact that the builder, we had an all-in price. He was going to build us 34 units for $4 million. This was in 2019 is when we actually inked the deal. So we put together our offering, and this is kind of funny. I'll explain why. This is the first offering for Lolo Peak Village. It came back. We hired a company to help us. It came back 200 freaking pages, and so this is what I was armed with. And now I had to go raise 1.5 million. So the first deal was a $4 million buy to be built, and I had to raise $1.5 million. So I was like, that won't be a problem, man. I got Mr. Milletta 20 years ago to give me $1.6 million, no problem. So our minimum investment was $50,000 on this deal. It was amazing. It was hard. It was really hard to raise that $1.5 million in $50,000 increments. It was hard at first. The first meeting I had was the main principal of Galusha, Higgins and Galusha, which is now like Whipley Accounting. So this is a really astute, smart guy. And I met him at Lolo Peak Brewery. He had a client he wanted to put into our deal. So I show up, and he's got this, and he's got like 25 sticky notes. And I've never done a syndication. I'm like, oh my God. So I just my real estate years, I always have a thing. When I go into a meeting, I'm going to give you my best 45 minutes. I mean, I'm coming in, it's phones off. You're my best 45 minutes. So I'm like, all right, let's just go for it. Let's see what happens. So I went in there and I saw those sticky notes. I'm like, holy shit. So, and he starts in and asking me questions. And I would say 75% of them I was able to answer. 25% of them I just looked like an idiot. But I just did it. I did it. And then I went back and I told John. So my partner, John Sr., is probably one of the smartest. He's never been stumped on a syndication question from me or anybody. He's just a wealth of knowledge. So I went back and I'm like, all right. So I said, every investor call I need to be on. So every call he would be on, I would get on and I would just listen. And I would say after 4 calls, I really feel like I had it. So that's the first deal. So Lolo Peak Village, we started that in 2018. We inked the deal in 2019. We took delivery of that building. If you've seen my social media post, you've probably seen it. You know the story. In May of 2020, I'm standing there with my partners. The height of COVID. I mean, the height of COVID. May of 2020, the building just got finished, and we just got the keys. So we got a brand new 34 unit. I'm standing there and I'm like smiling, and I'm just shitting myself. I'm going, we're gonna have to give this back to the bank. There's nobody. Nobody's going to rent an apartment in COVID. Nobody's going to show apartments. Well, that was my thought. I just thought, this is so, man, I've been trying to do this for 10 years. I finally got my first one done. Fucking COVID hits. This is going back to the bank. I'm done. I'm going to be selling houses again. So anyway, long story short on that, obviously, COVID, our pro forma was for $795. Those $795 units are rent for $1,035. Our 5% interest in our pro forma is 3.25%. So and they rented up in 3 weeks. I remember talking to, is anyone here from Missoula Property Management? Sorry, Josh. Missoula Property Management is our manager on that one. And I call them like, what's going on? They're like, no, man, we just wear a mask and gloves. Everybody's cool. You know, we just wipe. I'm like, no shit. And they're like, yeah, we got like, you know, so that thing filled right up. We got a huge boost from COVID as far as the rent escalations. And then when we went to get our permanent loan, you know, what we had pro forma was like a 5%, 4.5%. I mean, we got a 3.25% 30-year amortization locked for 10 years. So that little 34 units, our first deal, it's 14% cash on cash. So if you put in, if Rob put in $100,000 last year, he got $14,000 in rent distributions, plus he got his tax depreciation, which makes it pretty much tax free. You know, so it's just, you know, so we hit a home run on that one. Now, let me back up. When I first sat down with Mr. Duffy, the accountant, you know, I did it. I just sat myself and put myself through it, and I got smarter and smarter. You know, shortly after that, Klusowicz's came in for a big chunk of money, you know, and then a local retired NFL coach came in for a big chunk, which was super exciting, a Super Bowl champion coach. And so that was really exciting. And all of a sudden we raised that money and we got it done. So, you know, it took a while, but it was more of the learning curve. And also these type of investments, they're pretty much what I call friends and family. So you're not going to go get a big institutional fund to lend you your money. You're going to go get your money from your grandma, your mom, your just people that, yeah, exactly, accredited investors. So we only deal with accredited investors, which most of you probably know. Accredited investor has a net worth of a little over $1 million, not including their home, and or they make $220,000 a year, $300,000 combined income, something like that. So they're supposed to be a savvier person. Okay, cool, man. We got the first one done. Now we're off to the races, or so to speak. You know, so I put in the minimal chunk on that first one. I wanted to see how this went. So that was our first syndication. And you know, so once again, I want to go back to what a syndication is. A syndication is just simply a way to bring investors into a pool to go into your project. There's the GP and LP. The GPs are the general partners. Does anybody know what I'm talking about? Does people understand the GP LP part structure for the most part? Okay, it's pretty simple. The GPs are the ones that find the deal, put the deal together, arrange all the financing, do everything, and take on all the risk. We guarantee the notes. The LPs are wealthier investors that want to come along with us, and they don't want to do anything, you know. And our typical investor, this is kind of interesting. Our typical investor is probably in their early to mid 60s. They usually have made their money. A lot of them have done real estate themselves. They've had duplexes, fourplexes, and they're like, they've sold that stuff off, or they sell it off. A lot of them have been selling it off and putting it into our funds because they're making 14%, not doing shit, you know, and they're able to buy in to a project, a big project, for a small amount of money. So the second deal we did was that we did together here in Missoula. Our second one was, now once again, I've been doing this for 30 years, real estate brokerage, and I'm kind of a multifamily guy. I know a lot of the players. You know, I've just been dealing with that, so I have a little bit of inside track on some deals. So I have a builder buddy that I really like, Walker Development, Brian Walker, you guys might have heard of him. He had bought a property on South Avenue, and the joke was always that I missed it. I didn't see it. So he bought it, and he took it through entitlement and was getting it permitted. And you know, when the rubber meets the road, it's a putting a deal together and getting your renderings and stuff, and then actually going and getting the financing are two major different deals. So this is a 54 unit on South Avenue, and I was like, Brian, here's what I'm doing. Here's who I work with. You know, you should talk to these guys. You could be a part of the deal, and we'll take care of all the financing, and you're going to get the best financing, and you're going to have a fat job. You'll be the builder. So we had a couple meetings with the Nichols and Brian, and we hit it off. And if you've been over on South and Reserve, you know, where Winco is, across the street, there's that Holiday gas station. Behind that, That's it's almost done. 54 units. It's 42 units, which is going to be done like next week, and there's a 12-plex. So I put that deal together. So when we made a deal with Brian, and then that one, I think that's going to be an $11 million all in, and we went to raise $6 million for that one. Now, at that time, we had just, Lolo Peak Village was kicking butt, so we got a little momentum going. So we had to raise. We went from $1.5 million to our next raise was $6 million. I think it was. So, one great thing about these syndications is a lot of people that come into these will be like a 1031 exchange. So we had a guy out of Bozeman that just sold a string of convenience stores and had a bunch of money. So he didn't want to. So he didn't need cash, but he wanted this type of an investment. So we took. So he came in. And he bought the land. He bought the land through a 1031 to complete his exchange, and then we went out and raised the other amount of money. But on that one, we went with the $100,000 minimum, and I mean, we raised the money in like 3 weeks, man. So what happened since COVID? These kind of deals were always known in Missoula to be friends and family. You're just like all the people up in the Yellowstone Club or whatever in Bozeman, those big hitters. The out-of-state people, they're like, hey, I want to recreate in Montana, but I don't want to invest here. I like LA, San Francisco, stuff like it wasn't. We just couldn't bring those type of people in. Well, COVID hits, and all of a sudden the rush is on. People moving to Montana, and the craziness going on in these big cities, and especially with, if you look what's going on in LA to this day, they just extended the eviction moratorium. Those people there's a vast amount of people that are gaming the system. They haven't made a rent payment in 3 years. I mean, there's a landlord down there I know. He's out $20 million in income, and he can't refinance because he has no income. It's just screwy. So those people, all of a sudden, you guys got a boogie?
Yes.
No worries. Were they bored? Was that boring?
No, it's great. Good to meet you.
Hey, you bet.
God, that was amazing.
I'm halfway done.
No, you're not.
Just kidding.
They're not actually part of the meetup. They were just.
They were just. Oh, no.
They were just hanging out.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I know. They just happen to be sitting.
They're just. So a lot of our guys, a lot of times when we find a property, we've got people. We've gotten the word out about us, and we have a lot of people that want to do a 1031, and we can accommodate them two ways. A lot of times we'll have, if he sold the property and he's got $1 million exchange, and we're looking at, he can come in and use that exchange to take down our land. And what we do is this gets a little more complicated, but he comes in as a tenant in common, so he's a partner with us for 2 years to complete his exchange. Then we roll him down into the limited partnership. So we do that. I think we've done that 4 or 5 times now. And that's where a lot of people are selling their existing properties. They're harvesting their equity because the market got so high, and then they're coming in through a 1031 into our projects where they're now their hands off. So that's worked out really well. So back to Fort Grounds, we raised $6 million on that one. We raised $8 million. We oversubscribed, it's called, and we had to shut it off. We're like, we can't take any more. We don't want to dilute everybody's returns. So that was all of a sudden, I had a couple come in from San Francisco that was a referral from my partner's, like a cousin out of San Diego. I said San Francisco. They came up from San Diego, and he owned some buildings in San Diego, and they were talking about maybe selling them. And I took them, and I was driving around, and I started realizing, like, these guys are so hands-on. He was telling me about how many times he has to go to Home Depot and this and that. And I said, well, our investments are mailbox money. I said, the people that invest with us are people that are done doing the day-to-day stuff, and they're putting the money into our fund because they just want mailbox money. And his partner, they're gay guys. The partner, he's like, oh yes, that's us. So I don't want it. And the other guy, I was like, he's not ready to be hands off. Well, so I was like, all right, you get my best 45 minutes, man. I'm going to drive you down. So one thing, when I followed Cynthia Bryan around 31 years ago, she used to do a tour of Missoula. So new buyers that would come in, she would drive them around, drive them through downtown, maybe stop at Warden's, go around the university, talk about how we get 26,000 people every freaking Saturday in this little town, and then how it's called the Five Valleys, and you know, and you got Grant Creek and Butler Creek and Rattlesnake and Miller Creek, and so that became my thing. I became known when I was selling houses as the guy. I had an inn with St. Pat, so whenever a doc came in, I took people on the tour. And then I had people that wanted me to take them on the tour just to show them, like, we're even buying real estate, you know, like, so I got out of that. But for these investors, I started the tour back up. And, you know, and so I showed them Missoula and all the hot spots and what's going on. And I just like, this is dumb. This guy's hands-on. That guy, that couple to this day are our largest investors. They got over $4 million in 3 different projects with us. So, you know, just, you know, so I'm so thankful I gave my best 45 minutes. So that's kind of, so the syndications, like I was talking about, that's just a GP, general partner, limited partner structure, which has been around forever, but it's always been kind of on the down low. This is how big Blackstone, Goldman Sachs, that's how they raise their money, is through these type of syndications. You know, that's how they're general partners, and they get big other institutional investors to invest their money, and they go out and invest the money. So it's been around, but you can't go out and solicit it to anybody, the average person. So in 2012, the Jobs Act, when Obama was in administration, they created the Jobs Act, and the Jobs Act deregulated some of the security stuff, where you could now crowdfund and you could solicit an investment. I could go out and solicit this investment to an accredited investor. It was all, you know, this was so, wow, that just opened up a whole new world, right? So that happened in 2012. I was still 6 years away from doing my first syndication. But now, so if you've looked at my social media, I'm always posting, more so now, social media posts about, hey, if you want to invest alongside of us, you know, go to this website. So our company is called, I'm not soliciting, I'm just telling them if they, yeah. So Cornerstone Commercial Investment. If you want to go to our website, you can see, you know, a lot of our past and present projects, but you can also see the documents. So in a syndication, there's 4 main documents. There's your offering, which are the pretty pictures, you know, like what it is and what the returns are going to be and stuff like that. It's usually a 10, 15-page document. And then the second set of documents is the LP, the limited partnership agreement, which is, you know, how we run the business and what our roles are. And then we have our operating agreement. So there's a limited partner agreement and operating agreement. And the operating agreement outlines our fees that are involved and stuff like that. And then the last is called a subscription document. So if you were to come into our fund, you fill out a subscription document. And that's, so what happened, so those are 4 different sets of documents. And when we got our first one, for some reason, they put it all together. So I was going out soliciting money with this crazy, you know, nobody read this, you know, it's 200 people. This is like you get from your stockbroker. Nobody, I mean, people looked at it, they looked at the pretty pictures and stuff, but, you know, so as we've gone on, we, you know, and we would do we do monthly distribution. So I was in favor of doing quarterly, but we just decided we're going to do monthly. So every single month, if Taylor was in Lolo Peak Village, you get on about the 10th of every month, you get an email that says, hey, this is how much we collected this month. This is how much we paid out in bills, and this is what was left over and distributed to the partners. So it comes in a nice email with a copy of the income and expenses, and then you get a direct deposit right in your checking account, and people love it. So it's really cool. About the 10th every month, we're getting mailbox money. So that's really taken off. The second one, Fort Grounds, I'm talking about on South and Reserve, you know, we're going to start seeing checks in about 90 days. So when we set this up, we set it up as an acquisition company. So we wanted to go out and buy existing apartment buildings that either needed, we call them value add, that needed fixing up, or just, you know, looked like it would fit our criteria. So we were out there looking, and as you know, everything out there has been so ungodly expensive. You know, existing buildings are trading at a 4% cap rate. You know, it just doesn't pencil. So by going from the ground up, we're able to underwrite our deals at a 7 to 8% cash on cash and about a 7% cap rate. and that's from a 4% to a 7% cap rate. I mean, you're talking, you know, on our size of deals, millions of dollars. So we just, you know, does anybody know who Grant Cardone is? And raise your hand if you know Grant Cardone. Okay, so he's a guy that I just want to punch in the face, but I read all his shit. I watch his stuff. He's the GOAT of syndications. You know, I mean, he's just so when I first came across him, my fraud meter went just ballistic. You know, but I researched that guy. They buy Metro, you know, Scottsdale, Miami product at 3%. You know, they're paying out 3% returns. That doesn't work for us. But I mean, but man, he's raised $900 million doing this. So he does the same thing we do. His fees are way higher, and the returns are really low. But it works, you know. And I mean, I think if I came out like, bought a new Tahoe today, got a new iPhone watch, you know, my investors would run the other way. But it works for him. So with the Jobs Act, now we can go out and solicit. So we use an email program to attract, that keeps in touch with our investors. But social media has been pretty big. I've got a lot of good stuff off social media. It's getting better and better. So that's kind of now a syndication, just so you know, is actually we buy the property in an LLC, and if Keith wanted to come in and invest with us, he's actually buying shares of the company. So the subscription document is that he's buying X amount of shares in that deal. He's not actually buying property, he's buying shares. So that's kind of what my background is, and that's kind of the gist of what a syndication is. Now I got a little bit more to talk about, but I wanted to open it up. If anybody had any questions on that part, anybody? Negative?
Why was your loan to value ratio so much different than
Okay, good question. So we're looking at a project in Bozeman, Montana right now. I went to college in Bozeman for a couple years. Bozeman has an enormous amount of units coming on market right now. I think I read 2,500 units under various stages of development. They definitely have a lot going on right now. They've got the Yellowstone Club up in Big Sky. That's sold out during COVID.